the Soviet Union's collapse, forgotten Cold War secrets and more. When it comes to children's playgrounds, the images that spring to mind are usually the same: cheerful colors, the giggles of children enjoying a sunny day, and maybe the distant cheers of kids racing down slides. But when we cross over to the former Soviet Union, the scene changes dramatically. There, instead of vibrant hues and joyful laughter, you'll find playgrounds coated in drab grays, adorned with stern symbols of the state and bearing an eerie silence. What's even stranger is that these stark play spaces were once considered cutting-edge, embodying the progressive spirit of a nation intent on building a brighter future. Today, these playgrounds have been mostly abandoned, yet they continue to intrigue anyone who stumbles upon them, including a growing number of Westerners seeking a glimpse into the bygone era of the USSR. So why did the Soviet Union invest so much effort into creating such peculiar playgrounds? And what happened to them after the fall of communism? To understand the evolution of Soviet playgrounds, we must first recognize the immense importance placed on children within the ideology of communism. Unlike Western nations where children were seen as innocent and free-spirited, the Soviet Union viewed children as malleable assets, future contributors to the state who must be rigorously trained and prepared for their roles in society. As a result, children became a key battleground in the ideological struggle between the Soviet Union and the West. Everything from schools to toys was utilized to instill communist values in the younger generation, and playgrounds were no exception. From the early days of the Bolshevik Revolution, in 1917 until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, playgrounds went through several distinct phases, each reflecting the changing needs and priorities of the regime. During the initial years after the revolution, playgrounds were established primarily to keep children off the streets and out of factories while their parents worked. But as the regime consolidated its power, playgrounds quickly evolved into instruments of political indoctrination. By the 1930s, the Soviet government had decided that playgrounds should play a central role in the creation of the new Soviet person, a citizen who is disciplined, physically fit, and ideologically sound. To achieve this goal, traditional play equipment like swings and seesaws were replaced with exercise apparatus such as parallel bars, rope ladders, and climbing frames. These changes were driven by the belief that physical strength and stamina were essential qualities for the defense of the socialist state. The emphasis on physical fitness reached new heights during World War II. With the country under attack, the government feared that the potential loss of millions of young men to the front lines could devastate the Soviet Union, so the war effort extended even to the playgrounds, which now had to prepare the next generation to take up arms if necessary. Games like Soldier and Red Riding Hood were banned as frivolous, and children were organized into Young Pioneers, a paramilitary youth group whose activities centered around military drills and mock battles. After the war, the focus shifted again. With the start of the space age in the late 1950s and the race to conquer outer space, the Soviet Union began using its playgrounds to promote new ideals of national pride, technological advancement, and international prestige. Images of rockets, satellites, and cosmonauts replaced soldiers, as children were encouraged to dream of becoming pioneers of the future, exploring new frontiers, and representing the Soviet Union on the global stage. Despite the regime's best efforts, however, the true spirit of play could not be suppressed. Even during the darkest days of communism, children found ways to make their own fun, whether it was swinging on tires, sliding down makeshift slides, or climbing on discarded pieces of construction equipment. Soviet children managed to imbue these austere spaces with joy and imagination. As one Russian man recalled of his childhood in the 1970s, "We didn't have any toys, so we made our own. We played with whatever we could find, like boxes, bottles, and old tires. We were good at making something out of nothing." While the Soviet playground may appear brutalist and austere by Western standards, it actually served an important function in the lives of Soviet children. It taught them the values of endurance, discipline, and strength, traits that were highly regarded in Soviet society. Furthermore, the lack of bright colors and soft surfaces was intentional, designed to toughen up children and prepare them for the harsh realities of life in the Soviet Union. Finally, the playgrounds offered a sense of camaraderie and community, as children came together to conquer the daunting play structures and compete with one another to see who was the strongest. The legacy of Soviet playgrounds is a complex one. On the one hand, They represent the dark side of the Soviet regime, its obsession with control and its tendency to politicize every aspect of life, even children's play. On the other hand, these playgrounds also embody the resilience and ingenuity of the Soviet people who managed to find joy and beauty even in the most austere and oppressive environments. Today, as the memories of the Soviet Union fade and Russia transitions into a more consumerist and individualistic society, these playgrounds have largely been abandoned. Most have fallen into disrepair, and many have been demolished. However, some still remain, standing as silent witnesses to a bygone era, and serving as reminders of the profound impact that ideology can have on even the most mundane aspects of our lives. Visiting one of these playgrounds today is like stepping back in time and experiencing firsthand the atmosphere of a vanished world. The crumbling metal structures and faded paint offer a tangible connection to the past, allowing us to better understand the challenges and complexities of the Soviet experience. For those who grew up in the Soviet Union, returning to these playgrounds can evoke a sense of nostalgia and longing for a simpler time before the hardships of post-Soviet Russia set in. The familiar sights and sounds can transport them back to their childhood, when life was full of hope and possibility. Seeing the state of their former playgrounds can also be a jarring experience, forcing them to confront the dramatic changes that have transformed their country over the past few decades. The decline of these playgrounds mirrors the broader trajectory of Soviet society, moving from a planned economy to a capitalist one. But beyond their historical significance, these abandoned playgrounds also raise important questions about the nature of childhood and the role of play in society. How do we balance the need for structure and discipline with the importance of creativity and imagination in children's lives? And what are the unintended consequences of using playgrounds as tools for political indoctrination and social control? The silence and decay of these Soviet-era play spaces challenge us to re-examine our assumptions about childhood and the purposes of play. They remind us that children are not simply passive recipients of their environment, but active agents who shape their own experiences and find ways to make their voices heard even in the most challenging circumstances. As we reflect on the legacy of these playgrounds, we must acknowledge the profound impact that ideology, politics, and culture can have on the most fundamental aspects of human experience. They serve as a powerful reminder of the need to protect children from the dangers of political manipulation and exploitation, and to ensure that their innocence and imagination are preserved. At the same time, we can learn from the resilience and ingenuity of Soviet children, who found ways to make their own fun and community even in the face of great adversity. Their story is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the importance of preserving the cultural heritage of our past.